Direct examination of Brad Weber. When we last were talking, you kind of got upset with me. Do you remember why you were upset? Yes. Why were you upset? I was upset because you were trying to tell me what I did. And particularly what? What I did when I got off work. Okay, and you testified on the stand that you went directly home from work. Is that correct? That's correct. That's not what you told Agent Pohl and Christopher Guti when you met with them on February 19th, 2017. Okay, who are those guys? Law enforcement officers. Okay. Do you remember meeting with law enforcement officers? Multiple times. Okay, I'm going to hand you one of their reports and ask you to read the second. You can read all of it. It's not very long. Read the second paragraph. Tell me when you're done. I'm done. You told these officers after you got off that you went to your various ATM machines that you own and performed a routine service. Is that what you told them? I don't recall that. Okay, but that's what that says. Mr. McClellan says, Judge. Brad Weber says, that's what this says. McClellan, Judge, I object. That's improper impeachment. He's giving it to him. He says he doesn't recall that. That's the end of that impeachment, Judge. Gull says, sustained. The week before February 13th, 2017, where were you? I don't know. Do you remember being in Arizona and visiting your folks? Not a week before. I went on a 3-day trip to Arizona. Okay, not a week. Okay, that's fair, that's fair. And you got back when? Sunday. Okay, how often in 2017? Well, strike that. We need to talk about your ATM business. Tell the jury about your ATM business. I have ATMs. Well, what are ATMs? Money machines? All right, what does it stand for? If you know. I don't know. Okay. And back, what do you do? I mean, do you use these machines to make money? Yes. How do you make money with the ATM machines? Surcharge. Okay, tell the jury a little bit about the surcharge. When someone takes money out, they get charged a surcharge. And so I get the surcharge. You get the surcharge? After I pay the people that own the business. So we see these where we push a button and there's are you willing to pay $1 for the surcharge? Sometimes I see that. Is that what you're talking about? Yes. All right. How many of those machines back in 2017 did you have? I don't know. Would it help refresh your recollection by looking at the deposition? I guess. At one time, I had 30-something, and this day, I have maybe 15? Okay. Does that help? It kind of does, but I really need you to kind of bear down on 2017. If you would look at page 6, line 5 through 7, how many, are you done? Yeah. How many back in 2017 did you have? I don't know. This says an estimate. Okay. Do you want an estimate? Sure. 35. Okay, thank you. So, and how often in 2017 would you be attending to your 35 roughly ATM machines? I don't know an answer to that. It's on a need basis. If they start to run out of money, I will put money in it. Would it help refresh your recollection by looking at your deposition? Sure. Yeah, pages 8, lines 5 through 7. Does that refresh your recollection? I don't. Oh, okay. I guess I don't remember the question. How often would you be attending to your ATM machines in 2017? I do something with ATMs every day. Okay, what would you do every day with these ATM machines? What kind of maintenance do they require, if any? No maintenance. I look up on the computer to see where they sit money-wise. Okay. So I can sit at home and look on the computer and tell where they're at. Okay, you got to go? Or how do the money machines get money in them? Who puts the money in there? Me. How does the money machine get the receipt tape in there? I put it in. Okay. How does the money machine get money taken out of it? I don't know. Where do you get the money from? I get the money from the bank. Okay, so I don't take money out of the ATM machine. I put money in it. Good to know. A customer takes it out and pays the surcharge. Okay, and then the surcharge goes directly to the bank? It goes to the network. All right, so what happens when the money runs out? The machine runs out of money. What happens? It has a screen that doesn't let it go, doesn't let it dispense any more money. Are you making money when the machine runs out of money? No. What about the receipt when there's no receipt? That don't bother me. Okay. I mean, yes, I put the receipt paper in there. When the machine gets low on money, I go to the bank and get money, and I take it to the machine. Where do you go to the bank? What bank did you go to back in 2017? I really don't know. I'm guessing if I had to guess, I would guess Regents, but I'm not sure. Okay, and so you would have to give him like a check, or how would you get the money out? Okay, so you take money out of the ATM, $100. Mm-hmm. It takes that money out of your account along with the surcharge and puts it in my account. I'm talking about the cash that you put in there. I get it from the bank. Okay, and you have to maintain those machines by putting cash in there on a regular? The 35 machines from 2017, is that correct? Yes. And what kind of place were these ATM machines? Like where they bank? I'm going to guess not, but I guess I'd be wrong. Where were they? Gas stations? Taverns, restaurants? What geographic area were these 35 machines in 2017? Where were they? In Indiana. Okay. Give the jury an idea of where, though, in Indiana. From Mr. McClellan steps in. Judge, I'm going to object at this point. I don't know how this is relevant. I don't know how this line of questioning is relevant. Goal says, how's this relevant? Baldwin responds, trying to establish that he has to maintain his 35 machines, including on the day in question, February the 13th, 2017. Goal says, well, would we narrow it to that date then? Because this is really not relevant. Baldwin responds, I'm starting with the broad scope, and then I move down into that. Goal says, okay, well then let's move down into that. Then they proceed. What would necessitate the need to attend any of your 35 machines, ATM machines in 2017? Lack of money or lack of paper? And you had been out of town for at least 3 days prior to this, is that correct? That's correct. Okay, would you use your van to service ATMs? Usually not. You used your blue Subaru. I don't have a blue Subaru. What did you have back in 2017? I had a black Subaru. Black Subaru. Okay. Just so the jury understands, where in 2017, in February 2017, because I don't think this question has been answered. Where were the ATMs geographically in February of 2017? Central Indiana. Okay. How close were they to the bank that you were using in February of 2017? McClellan steps in. Judge, I'll object again. I don't know how this is relevant. Goal responds, overruled. Weber says, where I used multiple banks. Okay. Now you use multiple banks. Regents, but I don't always go to the same branch. Okay. And if that's what you're talking about. So if the bank was closer to one of these 35 ATM machines back in February 2017, you would go to the bank closest to the machine, the place where you were going to work on that machine, or fill it with cash? No. Okay, then what? I would have to call the bank and order the money. Okay. So it wasn't always the same branch. It's usually branches in Lafayette. Does that help? All right. Did law enforcement ever ask you about, let's say, Guti and Pole that you talked to? Did they ever ask you, hey, can we see your phone records about what banks, if any, that you called to order up this cash? Did they ever ask you that? I don't remember. Did you tell Pole and Guti that you went? I don't remember. I don't even know who they are. I mean, I talked to a lot of people. But your memory today is after that you went straight from work to your house. Is that correct? I went from on that day in question. When I got off work, I went straight home. And you normally work till 2:30, is that correct? If I'm on a day shift, yes. And on that day you got off at 2:02 p.m., that's correct. Now, was that a service, your ATM machines? No. Subaru's not going to let me off anytime special because of my side business. Well, they let you off special that day, 2:02. They chose for me to leave, not me. So you had a phone call with somebody in August of this year asking you to come to the police station. Is that correct? No. That's not correct? No. So nobody from law enforcement called you and said, hey, we want to talk to you? They did say that. They did? Yeah. What were you saying no to? You asked if they asked me to come to the police station, and they didn't. Well, what did they ask you? They asked me to come to a different location. Okay, that's fair. And then after that phone call, you then told them, and who was the person that called you, if you remember? I don't remember. I should have it. Yeah, you remember Steve Mullen? It could be him, yeah. I've talked to him on the phone. Was it him or not? I can find it in your deposition. I don't know. I don't remember. Okay, would it help refresh your recollection? It could have been him. Okay. Sometimes I got texts. Page 18, is it okay to refresh your recollection? Is it up to me? I don't know what you're asking. You know, that's a valid question. I'm asking you, would you mind refreshing your... Yeah. And again, it's page 18, lines 25. The very bottom of page 18, the top of page 19. The bottom of page 18 to top of page 19. Okay. So the question was, who called you to come in and talk to them from law enforcement? It says probably Steve. I don't really remember. It was either text or call. But whoever it was, you said Steve. It says probably Steve. Right. Okay, is that Investigator Mullen? Probably. Okay, but you call him Steve? I don't know. That's what they typed up. Where's that from? Remember when we had the deposition? When you subpoenaed me? Yes. Yeah? Okay, so did you call the guys you met with Steve? I don't talk to him. I mean, that's his name. I don't know. After that phone call with Steve, you came in and told them that you drove directly from work in a van. Is that correct? McClellan steps in. Judge, objection. It's a leading question. Gull says sustained. What did you tell... Thank you. What did you tell... Weber says, that on the day I drove a van to work, dropped off a trailer. When I got off work, I drove home. Is that different than you told any other law enforcement in the past? I don't know. Okay, not to my knowledge. What vehicles did you have back and when would you use them back in 2017? To my knowledge, I just had the Subaru and the van. And the only time I used the van was when I was pulling a trailer. So 9 out of 10 times you'd be using the Subaru. Yes, more than that. You did first tell law enforcement that you drove the Subaru on February 13th. I believe so, but I don't remember. I normally drive the Subaru. Was your memory better in 2017 than it is now? I'm getting older, I guess. I don't know. How long? What did you do when you got home from work that day? Took a nap. Okay, do you know how long? Nope. Until I got woke up. Did you go right to sleep when you got home, or did you wind down first? Probably smoked a cigarette and relaxed a little bit, but pretty much went straight to sleep. What time did you wake up, if you know? I believe it was around 5. How did you wake up? Someone knocked at the door. What did you do after the officer was there? I went back to sleep. What was the conversation with the officer? He informed me that they were looking for a couple of missing girls and that asked about the bridge. You're familiar with that, where the Deer Creek is, correct? Yes. And your house is kind of up here and the creek is down here. Is that fair to say? Yeah. And you're on the south side of the creek, is that correct? Yes. Have you ever been down on the north side of the creek, on that property north of the creek? Yeah, I am right now. What do you mean? I'm on the north side of the creek right now, right? Or am I on the south? I think you're on the south side. Okay, the opposite side of where you were. Have you ever been on that side of it? Yes. Do trespassers come onto your property? Yes. Did they back in 2017? Yes. Would you ever confront those trespassers about getting? Yes. Would you have been able to hear from your house if anybody was screaming? McClellan steps in. Judge, I'm going to object to speculation. Goal says sustained. It would depend if I was inside or outside. Yes, if I was outside, I could. You did not hear any screaming on February 13th when you got home, did you? I didn't. Now, if you got home at 3:30, well, strike that. You heard no screaming on February 14th, did you? McClellan says objection. Weber answers it anyway. No. McClellan says, oh, sorry, Judge. And then the questions continue. Who had access to your parents' property in 2017? Me. And what about your brother? Like it's land? I don't know what you consider access. Who visited the house at your parents' property in 2017? I can't list all the people that visited. I don't know how to answer that. Well, and that wasn't a whole year time. You want to know all the people that came to my house? No, that's fine. I do think we need to clear up one thing. That's not your property, correct? That's correct. How many houses did you own back in 2017? I think one, but I don't know. Okay, you had a house in Lafayette then? I believe it would have been between Roseville and Delphi. Okay. Did you live in a trailer as well at some point in time in 2017? Yes, I don't know. Okay, I believe so. If you were driving on that lane, I'll call it a lane, the driveway of 625, past the Liebert house, can I call that a driveway? Sure. Is that fine? And you're looking to your left, would you, in February of 2017, would you have been able to see anybody that was in the area to your left in the woods? If I was looking that way, I probably would have. When was the last time you were on the other side of the creek, the north side of the creek? This summer. How many outbuildings are at your property? 5 maybe. Okay. How many stories is your house? 1 or 2 stories? 2. 2 stories. Did you give law enforcement permission to go into your outbuildings? Yes. I'm going to ask you to refresh your recollection if that's okay. Page 85, lines 4 through 5. Page 85, lines 4 through 5. McClellan interjects. Judge, again, what are we impeaching here? Goal. Do not know. Baldwin, I'm not impeaching. I asked if it would refresh his recollection about did he give law enforcement permission to go into the outbuildings. McClellan says, he answered the question, Judge. There's no need to refresh his recollection. Weber says, okay, go ahead. Okay, did you give permission to? McClellan steps in. Judge. And Weber answers yes. The court, hold on, sir. Go ahead. Baldwin says, all right. So today, Mr. Baldwin says, do you want me to go ahead? The court says, well, is that correct? I'm going to now impeach him. That is not correct according to his deposition. Weber steps in. Are you saying on the 13th, and before you said, did I give law enforcement? Yes, I did. They searched my house. It wasn't on the 13th. Okay, but yes, I did give them. Baldwin says, do you want I don't want to overstep. Am I good to go? Or the court says, well, I don't know where you're going. He's answered your question. Baldwin says, yeah. On the 13th, did you give law enforcement permission to go into your outbuildings? No. That's what I wanted. Thank you. Where did you park your vehicle back in February 2017? I don't know. I believe the van was in the grass, and I believe the Subaru was in the driveway. Okay, I'm going to hand you a photograph that was, I think, taken in February, the 19th or 17th, of your garage and ask you to identify it. And again, the question I just asked was, where did you park your vehicle? This is KKK. Oops. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Does that look familiar to you? That looks like my garage, yes. Okay, is that what it fairly and accurately looked like back in February of 2017? Yeah. What is the vehicle there parked in the car in the garage? McClellan steps in. Judge, I'm going to object at this point. Can I see what he's showing him? Is there a date stamp on it showing that date it's from? Do you know what vehicle that is in the garage? McClellan says, well, hold on a minute, Judge. Weber says, I don't. Court says, hold on. McClellan says, I object to this line of questioning. One, for relevance. Two, Judge, he hasn't established when this picture was taken or who even took it. Baldwin says, he says that it fairly and accurately depicted what his garage looked like in February of 2017. McClellan responds, he didn't say February 2017. What I heard was 2017. Baldwin, no, I said February. McClellan, okay. Gull says, okay. Baldwin, I move to admit Exhibit KKK. McClellan, state's going to object to relevance. Judge, I don't understand the relevance of this line of questioning. Gull says, how's this relevant? Baldwin, there's sticks on the ground or the floor there of the garage. The court, again, I cannot rule on an objection and I don't have the proper information. Okay, so the objection is relevance. And when was this photograph taken? Mr. Baldwin, according to our February 19th, 2017. The court, okay, so I'll show this on February 19th of 2017. Yeah. Gull says, okay, I'm not sure how it's relevant, but I'll admit it over the state's objection. Exhibit KKK admitted. Baldwin, move to publish. Gull says, you may. McClellan, Judge, while that's been published, could we have a sidebar, please? Court says yes. McClellan says, used to. He hasn't established any third party, and so that may be a danger now if he's asked any more questions about the sticks and what he does with the sticks. Mr. Baldwin, he said that he didn't give permission to use his outbuildings or for the police to go in there. I don't have to accuse him, I don't have to accuse him of it. I can say somebody walked in there, dropped sticks. It could be them together. By the way, Judge, he had a gun that was not excluded. He lives right across the way. He's told different stories about his direct route home. McClellan, so he's... Baldwin, well, I think I have the right to do it. McClellan, if you can meet the nexus. Baldwin, well, and also anybody that was in the area could have used his outbuildings to hide the girls until... McClellan says, it's the state's opinion that... Gull says, we're not doing that. Baldwin, not doing what? Court, Gull says, we're not going any further with this line of questioning. Baldwin, okay, that's fine. Sidebar conference concluded. Back to questioning. I just want to clarify that when I asked you about the outbuildings, you said there were 5, and the number of stories on the house, and you said there were 2. We're talking about the property off of Deer Creek there, correct? I believe so, yeah. Okay, I just didn't want the jury confused that it was somebody else's, your property in Lafayette there. Oh, okay. So I guess there would be 3 and 17. There's 5 now. Okay, thank you for clarifying. 3 outbuildings in 2017. I believe so. Mr. Baldwin says, all right, no other questions. Thank you. Gull says, may I have the exhibit, please? The court reporter, thank you, Mr. McClellan. McClellan says, thank you, Judge. All right, cross-examination of Brad Weber by Mr. McClellan. Mr. Weber, good afternoon. There was a question by Mr. Baldwin about your memory being better in 2017. And generally, would you agree that your memory would be better in 2017 or closer to February 13th, 2017 about what happened on that day? I would agree with that. Okay, and you testified to this. But you talked to law enforcement several times, is that correct? That is correct. Do you recall talking to law enforcement on February 17th of 2017, just a few days after the girls went missing? Like, I don't know the date, but they stopped me coming home a few times. Sure. Do you remember talking to, you probably don't remember the officer's name, but do you remember talking to an officer, Shane Bernhardt, and Indiana State Trooper Brian Kubiak? I don't know. I got stopped on 625 and they searched my car and searched my house and talked to me and gave me a lie detector. Let's back up a little bit. On February 13th, 2017, you were at home taking a nap and a police officer woke you up. Is that right? That's correct. And he asked you to look around your property. Is that correct? He asked if he could. If he could look around your property? Yes. And you told him, sure, go ahead. Yep. At that point, did he ask you to look in any of your outbuildings? No. Okay, later on, law enforcement did ask you to look in your outbuildings. Is that correct? Yes. And did you let them do that? Yes. You let them search your house even? Yes. After you were awakened or woke up by the officer on the 13th at 5:30, do you remember the very next time you spoke with law enforcement? At 8. Okay, around 8. Did you ever talk to law enforcement on February 17th, a few days later? I talked to them every day for quite a while. If you were to show you a police report from February 17th of 2017, would that help you remember whether or not you talked to law enforcement on that day? If it's the day that I'm thinking, it's when they stopped my car going home. I believe that was the 17th, but I'm not sure. If I showed you this document, would it help? Maybe. Okay, I want to draw your attention to the date on there. Do you see the date? Yes. Okay, and then I want you to draw your attention, so let me start here. Do you remember talking to law enforcement this day? I remember talking to them. I don't remember that particular guy. Okay, that's okay. And when you talked to law enforcement that day, you told them that you got off work at 2:02 p.m. Is that correct? That's correct. And you told them you went straight home. Is that right? That's correct. And that you got home right around 2:30. Is that correct? That's correct. And that's when you were awakened at around 5:30 by a sheriff's deputy. Is that right? That's correct. Again, is this on February 17th of 2017? Correct. Yes. Okay. Now, I want to fast forward to 2024 when you got a phone call or a text to come back in and talk to law enforcement. You said you didn't remember if it was a phone call or a text. That's correct. Okay, would it be common in the area where you live to not receive phone calls? It's or lose them or drop them. And so is it common for people to text you? That's correct. Because texts come through better than phone calls. That was a question. Because texts come through better than phone calls? Yeah. There, yes. Okay, and during that text or phone call, did the officer that contacted you, did they tell you that they wanted to talk to you about? No. They just said, come into the building. We'd like to talk to you, ask you a few questions. Yes. Mr. McClellan says, okay, I don't have any other question, Judge. Thank you. Gull says, Mr. Baldwin. And it looks like Baldwin has a few questions. But you told Officer Guti and Robert Pohl something different, didn't you, about your, I believe so according to you. Baldwin says, okay, thank you. No other questions. Gull says, Mr. McClelland. Mr. McClelland says, I don't have any other questions, Judge. Thank you. Gull says, does anybody on the jury have any questions for Mr. Weber? Would counsel approach? Sidebar conference conducted. Goal says, how far in advance do you have to order cash for the ATMs? Baldwin says, fine, yeah. McClellan, yeah. Goal says, what is the process for you to clock out of work? McClellan says, I'm fine with it. Baldwin says, that's good. Goal says, the report indicates Exhibit RD02. What does that mean? I don't know what report they're talking about. McClellan says, I didn't know. I'm going to object. We don't know what report. Goal says, okay, what driveway do you use to access your home? Baldwin, that's fine. The court, do you drive under the High Bridge? And did you use that route on February 13th? Baldwin says, yeah, it's a good question. Goal says, do you know if the ATMs were photo or video of? Do you know if the ATMs with the photo or video of when you would be servicing them? Baldwin says, yep. McClellan, I don't know, Judge. There's something about that question. I don't think it's relevant. Baldwin, if he knows. The court, we're getting into the weeds here. This is not even close to relevant. Baldwin says, hold on. I'm sorry, Judge, with respect. They're trying to figure out whether or not he was working on his ATM machines and if there's a camera that could prove that he did or didn't. So I think it's relevant for sure. Goal says, okay. So if they ask if there is a camera, we don't have that because nobody got that. Baldwin says, he'll either know or he won't know. Goal says, so I'll ask that over the state's objection. On February 13th, 2017, would you have went home after work to map out what machines needed filled after? Because he said he went home and went to bed. Mr. McClellan says, yeah, we can let that question in. Baldwin, I don't care one way or the other. McClellan, inaudible. Goal, we're just marching down a path of. Baldwin, that's fine. Goal says, do you typically go home after work at Subaru before servicing your ATMs? Baldwin says, yeah, that's good. Goal says, okay. All right. Juror questions of Brad Weber. Questions of the jury read by the court. So Goal's going to be asking these questions. Mr. Weber, do you know if the ATMs would have photo or video of when you would be servicing them? The ATM itself wouldn't, but some of the locations did. Goal says, okay. Any follow-up, Mr. Baldwin? No, Judge. Thank you. Goal says, Mr. McClellan? McClellan says, no, Your Honor. All right. Goal back to the jury questions. How far in advance did you have to order cash from your ATMs? Weber responds, okay, so the problem's not getting cash. It's getting 20s. Because the ATMs I have, all they have is 20s. All they dealt with. And the Regents, it's usually a week. Order in a week out. Goal says a week. Okay. Mr. Baldwin, any follow-up? Baldwin, no, Your Honor. Thank you. The court, Mr. McClellan? McClellan says, no, Your Honor. Goal back to the jury questions. What is the process for you to clock out of work? When you go through the turnstiles, you use a badge, and that's what clocks you in and out. Your badge? Okay. Yeah. Goal says, Mr. Baldwin, any follow-ups? Mr. Baldwin says, none, Your Honor, thank you. Goal says, Mr. McClellan. McClellan says, yes, Judge, just briefly. Questions from Mr. McClellan. So, Mr. Weber, just as you're leaving, you flash your badge at the turnstile and you walk out. It releases the turnstile to allow you out. Mr. McClellan, okay, thank you. Judge, nothing else. All right, Goal back to her questions. What driveway do you use to access your home? Brad says, the driveway right by Liebert's, the driveway that goes underneath the Monon High Bridge. The court, Mr. Baldwin? Questions by Mr. Baldwin. So you never use your other driveway? Well, isn't there another way in and out of your... Yes, there's another way. I could get in and out without using the driveway. Okay, and do you do that sometimes? I have, yes. Mr. Baldwin says, okay, no other, thank you. Goal says, Mr. McClellan. McClellan responds, no, Judge. And Goal's back to her jury questions. Do you drive under the bridge, and would you have taken that route on February 13th? I would have, and yes. Gull says, Mr. Baldwin. Mr. Baldwin, no questions. Gull says, Mr. McClellan. Mr. McClellan says, no, Your Honor, thank you. And do you typically go home after work at Subaru before servicing ATMs? Typically, I don't, no. And is it my understanding that the defendant has no further witnesses for today? Mr. Baldwin responds with, that is correct, Judge. Well, all right. Well, ladies and gentlemen.